Dear students, hello and welcome. I welcome you to this lecture. It is about the theory of motivation by Alfred Adler. And the objectives include to understand the basics of Adler's concept of motivation, to know about inferiority feelings as determinants of motivation, to know about the social influences, and to know about the lifestyle, and to be familiar with the drive of superiority. Students, what drives us, what motivates us to behave as we do, have been of the utmost importance to humankind since long. The ancient Greeks saw an individual as driven by spirit, such as courage and desires, with reason meditating between. The Hindu philosophy saw him as motivated by self-preservation, self-expression, sex, gregariousness, and an impulse to knowledge. Medieval scholastics thought we were driven by faith, reason, and our low appetites. Sometimes we have been viewed as either a machine reacting to external stimuli or a being motivated at the most basic level by the desire to avoid pain and seek pleasure. The Viennese psychoanalyst Alfred Adler, who had an important influence on many other great thinkers including Abraham Maslow, Carl Rogers, Erich Fromm, and Albert Ellis, best known for individual psychology, while giving his own interpretations of explaining behavior, advocated that human beings are motivated primarily by social urges. Adler was initially a colleague of Sigmund Freud, helped establish psychoanalysis, and was a founding member of the Vienna Psychoanalytic Society. Adler's theory focused on looking at the individual as a whole, which is why he referred to his approach as individual psychology. In sharp contrast to Sigmund Freud's major assumption that human behavior is motivated by inborn instincts and Carl Jung's principal axiom that human conduct is governed by inborn archetypes, Adler assumed that humans are motivated primarily by social urges. Humans are, according to Adler, inherently social beings. This emphasis upon the social determinants of behavior that had been overlooked or minimized by Freud and Jung is probably Adler's greatest contribution to psychological theory. Alfred Adler presents an optimistic view of people while resting heavily on the notion of social interest, that is, a feeling of oneness with all humankind. He saw people as being motivated mostly by social influences and by their striving for superiority or success. To Adler, people are born with weak inferiority bodies, a condition that leads to feelings of inferiority and a consequent dependence on other people. Therefore, a feeling of unity with others is inherent in people and the ultimate standard for psychological health. Alfred Adler, the world-renowned psychiatrist, stressed the need to understand individuals within their social context and believed that we all have one basic desire and goal to belong and to feel significant. In order not to feel inferior or small, one strives or struggles for superiority. Adler held that power motive is the central urge, and human beings are motivated by the urge to be important or powerful. Each one of us strives towards superiority. Therefore, the struggle for power, achievement, and status, or the will to dominate, are really an outgrowth of the fundamental need for security. Thus, the motivation of human behavior may be endorsed through a single basic drive known as the security drive. Now, what is striving for superiority and perfection? The question of what drives us, what great force underlies our motivation as individuals, was a matter of long time fascination for the psychologist Alfred Adler. For him, this motivating force was the striving for perfection, a term which refers to the desire we all have to fulfill our potential, to realize our ideals, a process similar to the more popular idea of self-actualization. Adler's theory suggested that every person has a sense of inferiority. From childhood, people work toward overcoming this inferiority by striving for superiority. Why one behaves in a particular fashion may be explained in terms of one's striving for the satisfaction of one's urge to dominate, to gain superiority, and to achieve perfection in one field or the other. This urge to dominate or to strive for superiority or perfection, as Adler says, is innate. He believed that this drive was the motivating force behind human behaviors, emotions, and thoughts. Adler believed that will to power is essential for superiority, and superiority is revealed through one's style of life. He explained that some individuals will focus on collaboration and contributions to society, while others will try to exert power over others. What is this perfection we are striving for? It is the enhancement of self-esteem, the success of overcoming the actualization of self. This striving is universal for humankind, although each individual gives it his unique stamp and carries within it the goal of an ideal community. The Utopians, the ideologists, the spiritual leaders all manifest this drive to perfection for themselves and humanity. Adler asserted that there is one basic dynamic force behind all human activity, a striving from a felt minus situation towards a plus situation, a feeling of inferiority towards superiority, perfection, totality. From an Adlerian perspective, all behavior has purpose and meaning, although individuals are not always conscious of this purpose and meaning. The idea that behavior is purposeful finds similarity with the humanistic notion that human beings are intentional, aim at goals, seek meaning, value, and creativity. The striving for self-esteem bears some similarity to Nietzsche's will to power, but for Adler, the search for personal superiority or power is only one way to seek perfection. The major goal is overcoming and not power. Now, style of life. Lifestyle refers to how you live your life, how you handle problems and interpersonal relations. Every person has the same goal, that of superiority, but there are innumerable ways to striving for this goal. One person tries to become superior through developing the intellect, while another bends all of his efforts to achieve muscular perfection. The intellectual has one style of life and the athlete another. Accordingly, one person may try to become superior through developing as a political leader, and another may strive to become a renowned author, writer, artist, scientist, or wrestler. Everything done is done with an eye to this ultimate goal. All of the person's behavior springs from his or her style of life. To Adler, the style of life was key to all a person's behavior. The person perceives, learns, and retains what fits the style of life and ignores everything else. One's style of life thus depends on the areas or fields in which one chooses to strive for superiority. The style of life is formed very early in childhood, by the age of 4 or 5, and from then on experiences are assimilated and utilized according to this unique style of life. Attitudes, feelings, and perceptions become fixed and mechanized at an early age, and it is practically impossible for the style of life to change thereafter. The person may acquire new ways of expressing his or her unique style of life, but these are merely concrete and particular instances of the same basic style found at an early age. What determines the individual's style of life? Adler is of the opinion that it is largely determined by the specific inferiorities, either fancied or real, that the person has. The style of life is a compensation for a particular inferiority. If the child is physically weak, its style of life will take the form of doing those things that will produce physical strength. The dull child will strive for intellectual superiority. The person perceives, learns, and retains what fits the style of life and ignores everything else. One's style of life thus depends on the areas or fields in which one chooses to strive for superiority. The kind of personality one possesses can be understood by studying one's style of life, that is, the goals of life that one has set for oneself and the way one strives to achieve these goals. According to Adler, the final goal alone can explain individual's behavior. Adler's psychology is known as individual psychology, as he emphasized individual differences. For him, self-assertion is the major drive. Everyone strives to develop a unique style of life which is shaped by two factors: inner self and the forces within the environment. Experiences of early life have great influence on the style of life of an individual. Now, inferiority feelings and compensation. Adler's theory suggested that every person has a sense of inferiority. According to Adler, all infants have a feeling of inferiority and inadequacy immediately as they begin to experience the world. First of all, they are born children in an adult world and realize that they have smaller and weaker bodies, less knowledge, and virtually no privileges. Then people start to compare themselves and realize that there are other people of their own age who are better athletes, better scholars, more popular, more artistically talented, wealthier, more socially privileged, more physically attractive, or luckier. There are two components of these feelings of inferiority: primary and secondary. Primary inferiority is the original and normal feeling of inferiority. maintained by an infant. This feeling is productive as it provides motivation for the child to develop. Secondary inferiority, on the other hand, is the inferiority feeling in the adult resulting when the child develops an exaggerated feeling of inferiority. These feelings in the adult are what is harmful and they comprise the inferiority complex. According to Adler, all humans experience feelings of inferiority as children and spend the rest of their lives trying to compensate for those feelings. As people replace the dependence of childhood with the independence of adulthood, the feelings of inferiority persist in varying intensity in different people. For some people, the sense of inferiority serves as a positive motivating factor as they strive to improve themselves in an effort to neutralize the negative feelings of inferiority. From childhood, people work toward overcoming this inferiority by striving for superiority. Adler believed that this drive was the motivating force behind human behaviors, emotions, and thoughts. We all have feelings of inferiority that become a motivating factor for us to develop skills, talents, and ways of overcoming our sense of inadequacy. Among psychologically healthy individuals, these feelings of inferiority encourage the pursuit of goals, providing motivation to strive towards self-improvement. In other words, by developing positive ways of coping with feelings of inferiority, individuals can end up achieving great things and making a positive contribution to society as a whole. According to Adler, all people develop a feeling of inferiority, which is a psychological condition that exists when a person's feelings of inadequacy are so intense that daily living is impaired. According to him, all humans experience feelings of inferiority as children and spend the rest of their lives trying to compensate for these feelings. The Austrian psychiatrist described compensation as a coping strategy. A person who compensates for what Adler called felt inferiorities is a person who makes adjustments in order to excel. This can mean trying extra hard despite initial failures or working around difficulties to find another way to succeed. In his view, people compensated for a behavioral deficiency. Compensation is a natural and healthy reaction to inferiority. It refers to the efforts to overcome real or imagined inferiority by developing one's own abilities. Persons unable to compensate for normal feelings of inferiority develop an inferiority complex. Alfred Adler held that the main motives of human thought and behavior are individual man striving for superiority and power, partly in compensation for his feeling of inferiority. Every individual in this view is unique and his personality structure, including his unique goal and ways of striving for it, finds expression in his style of life. Feelings of inferiority are a natural part of personality development. They start in childhood when we compare ourselves to adults and continue into adulthood when we discover limitations to our abilities. The natural and healthy reaction to inferiority feelings is compensation, efforts to overcome real or imagined inferiority by developing one's abilities. Adler postulated that since we all have various issues and shortcomings as people, our personalities develop largely through the ways in which we do or do not compensate for these inherent challenges. For Adler, all behavior is seen as goal directed and moves from a felt minus to a perceived plus. Now, social influences. Alfred Adler's individual psychology presents an optimistic view of people while resting heavily on the notion of social interest, that is, a feeling of oneness with all humankind. Social interest, also translated as community feeling, is defined as a sense of belonging to the world at large and contributing to that world in socially useful ways. Behaviors as examples of social interest may include contribution to the common welfare, caring, compassion, creativity, closeness, cooperation, and commitment. Adler believed that each person strives to belong and feel significant. Adlerian theory purports that humans are social beings and therefore all behavior is socially embedded and has social meaning. Adler emphasized the importance of relationships and being connected to others, including the larger community in which people reside. Adler saw people as being motivated mostly by social influences and by their striving for superiority or success. To Adler, people are born with weak inferiority bodies, a condition that leads to feelings of inferiority and a consequent dependence on other people. Therefore, a feeling of unity with others is inherent in people and the ultimate standard for psychological health. Alfred Adler, the world-renowned philosopher and psychiatrist, stressed the need to understand individuals within their social context. Adler began addressing such crucial and contemporary issues as equality, parent education, the influence of birth order, lifestyle, and the holism of individuals. According to Adler, when we feel encouraged, we feel capable and appreciated and will generally act in a connected and cooperative way. When we are discouraged, we may act in unhealthy ways by competing, withdrawing, or giving up. It is in finding ways of expressing and accepting encouragement, respect, and social interests that help us feel fulfilled and optimistic. Adler stated that there is an impact of social interaction. Working for the welfare on others compensates one's weakness and inferiority complex. It helps one to express the superior feelings. Adlerian psychology focuses on people's efforts to compensate for their self-perceived inferiority to others. These feelings of inferiority may derive from one's position in the family constellation, particularly if early experiences of humiliation occurred, a specific physical condition or defect existed, or a general lack of social feeling for others was present. One of Adler's main beliefs was that people need to feel that they belong. People are their best selves when they feel connected to and loved by those around them. This is especially important in families, which are the first communities most people belong to. When a family member feels that they are not appreciated, they will act in unhealthy ways and feel inferior. This may include withdrawing, competing, or giving up altogether. Feeling discouraged will increase this behavior and may cause the person to become isolated from their family. Adler asserted that although individuals are born with particular propensities, communities are responsible for the expression of specific characteristics and talents. Psychological types. For Adler, human behavior occurs in a social space and its direction comes from the degree of social interest. Adler described four different styles of life, each conceptualized in terms of the degree of social interest and activity. Adler did identify a small handful of personality types that he distinguished based on the different levels of energy he felt they manifested. The first type is the ruling type. The ruling type is high in activity but low in social interest. Such people attempt to deal with life problems by dominating them. These people are characterized by a tendency to be generally aggressive and dominant over others, possessing an intense energy that overwhelms anybody who gets in their way. However, some turn the energy inward and harm themselves, such as is the case with alcoholics, drug addicts, and those who commit suicide. Individuals who are sensitive, relying on others to carrying them through life's challenges. They lack energy in essence and depend on the energy of others. They are also prone to phobias, anxieties, obsessions, and compulsions, general anxiety, dissociation, etc. People of this type have such low energy that they are seen avoiding life as a whole and other people in particular. In extreme cases, these people develop psychosis, the end result of entirely retreating into one's self. Adler also believed in a fourth type. The people of this type are basically healthy individuals possessed of adequate social interest and energy. They are able to give to others effectively as they are not so consumed by a sense of inferiority that they cannot look properly outside of themselves. The socially useful exhibits activity in the service of others. Such people confront the life tasks and attempt to resolve them in a manner consistent with the needs of other individuals. For Adler, these types are typically formed in childhood and are expressions of the style of life. Students, to conclude, we must emphasize on the fact that Alfred Adler was an Australian physician and psychiatrist who is best known for forming the school of thought known as individual psychology. His approach and his school of individual psychology was based on the belief that people's relationships to their society were an integral part of their individuality. The foundation of Adler's theory revolved around a person's pursuit of superiority. Adler believed that each person entered the world with a definitive inferiority complex and spent a lifetime trying to overcome it. This theory became known as striving for superiority, and Adler's school focused on exploring this motivating force in the development of human behavior. For Alfred Adler, basic human motivation is drive for superiority, the desire for self-improvement, and upward drive for perfection. Students, it was all for today. I hope that you might have enjoyed the session. Thank you.